if there are no late items, then the next thing is that we go to the adoption of the minutes of the last meeting. Rick was in it and I was in that. And I read it, and in my mind, I have nothing. I definitely approve the minutes. And Rick, I guess the same question relates to you.
Yes.
You also approve the minutes. So that probably means that the minutes are approved. Is that correct?
Well, you can ask for a vote.
We asked for a vote, and Chris, you're not allowed to vote because you weren't there, right? So what do you think?
No, but I think the two of you probably constitute a majority.
Yes, 2 out of 2. That was actually quite an interesting meeting. I kind of remember that one well. So anyway, so we have that done. Then we go to the page. And that's public comments, but that is moved to 4.4, if I understand what is written here. That's correct, right? That is, or staff, that is addressed at 4.4.
Yeah, so there are no public so far, but yeah.
All right, okay. Then we have new business, and it is 1180 Miller Road. And it is a Board of Variance application has been submitted for 1180 Miller Road to decrease front setback requirements and increase maximum roof overhang projection. So then, Emma, you're going to give the presentation. So this is just all I have to say now, right? Then, so we can go to item 4.1. Agree? And 4.1 is submission of support, and to my knowledge we have 2 of those, which are well done, I would say. It's each neighbor on each side. It is from Nova Pon and Christian Venter. Shall I read it out? Is that the idea for the, I guess so, right? To whom it may concern, so this is written January 31st, 2021, and it comes from Nova Pon and Christian Venter. We are writing in support of Penny Nalderit's proposed plans to build a 120 square foot shed near the road at 1180 Miller Road. We have no objections to this structure as proposed, similarly living with the challenges of our own home being far uphill from parking. We understand how helpful such a storage shed should be. Sincerely, signed by Nova Pond and Christian Venter. The other one is, the second one, which is the neighbor on the other side, is from Don Reeder. And he says, we Board of Variance, I own property at 1084 Miller Road, next to 1080 Miller Road. I have seen the plans for the shed to be constructed above the parking space at 1080 and have no objection to the building. In fact, I think it is very attractive. I well understand the struggle of moving goods up the bluff, as my home too is high on the bluff. Thank you for considering my opinion. Donald Reeder.
If I may interrupt for a sec. You were reading out 1080, 1084. It's actually 1180, 1184.
Oh, it says 10,084 in the submission.
Okay, so that's in those 2 letters or just one of them?
It's in the letter of the, it's an email. Dated.
So the actual address is 1184 and 1180.
Yeah, well, that is a note that needs to be made.
Well, I mean, just if this is public and if people are listening, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, you're right. No, absolutely. So the first one is correct. The one from Nova Pone and Christian, they say 1180, and this one actually says written 1080. But I believe, yes, we can assume that they mean 1180. So you're right. Okay, we'll pick that up. All right. So those are the 2 letters of support from the neighbors. Neighbors are important, so that's very helpful. Then we're at the next item, 4.2. It's the presentation of application by Emma Chow, Island Community Planner. She will go through the 3 items. Okay, Emma, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you, Fritz. I'm just going to share screen. Please let me know if my microphone is not working.
Well, you're good now.
Having troubles. Is everyone seeing my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, excellent. So as mentioned, this is an application for 1180 Miller Road. The application number is BOV 2021-0034. And just for context, the location of this property is on the east side of the island in the Seven Hills neighborhood here, as you can see on the map. You can also see the contours for this area to give a sense of how steep this lot is. It's quite narrow and very steep. This is the zoning map, which shows the lot in the Settlement Residential 2 zone. It is adjacent to other Settlement Residential 2 zones, as well as Rural Residential 1 in the back. The zoning regulation for this zone requires that the roof overhang project no more than 0.9 meters into any required setbacks, and that all buildings must be set back a minimum of 7.5 meters from the front lot line. Another regulation that applies to all zones is our visibility setback. So any lot line adjacent to a public roadway, such as this lot, must be set back 4.6 meters. This is the site plan of the proposal. The proposed shed is almost entirely within the front setback, as you can see here. The front setback line is shown in the hashed line, 7.5 meters, and the shed is in the red highlighted area. Beside it is an architectural rendering of the shed to give some context to its appearance. And as you can see, the more detailed plan view here, the proposed variance for this shed will be a reduction of that 7.5 front setback to 4.9 meters. And the proposed roof overhang is to extend from the maximum 0.9 meters to 1.3 meters. Reasons that were cited in the application really pertain to the site constraints of this lot. As mentioned, it is quite narrow and steep and necessitates a number of staircases for foot access only to the house, which is further up the lot. And this has made it very difficult to transport heavier and bulkier items from the parking area to the house. The applicant would like to store certain items that don't need to be stored in the house down in the parking area to avoid this difficult transportation. And as part of that proposal, they would like to build a storage shed, in part to help maintain a more attractive and tidy streetscape. As mentioned, the steep topography of the site really restricts the siting for such a shed. It is already pushed back as far from the front lot line as possible, going up against a rock bluff. And the roof overhang, they are asking for the additional projection to help provide shelter for the existing walkway and what will be the loading area for the storage shed. Neighbors have been consulted and no objections have been received. Furthermore, the siting of this shed does not seem to impact sight lines for the adjacent roadway, Miller Road. That's better illustrated here in the site visit photographs. As you can see, the proposed siting is well above the grade of the road, and it is actually set back further than many of the existing trees. And also, given the site constraints, there really is no alternative siting option without involving a reduction of the front setback for the storage shed as proposed. And just a refresher on the legislation around the Board of Variance. the board can only permit minor variances. They are required to hear the applicant and any notified persons that want to speak. They must find undue hardship for the variance, and they also must consider the following: that the variance will not cause inappropriate development, adverse impacts to the environment or neighbors, that the variance will not vary permitted uses or densities, and the intent of the bylaw that is going to be varied cannot be altered. So I'll just leave that checklist up for a moment and answer any questions the board might have at this point.
Was there consideration given to access from above off the cul-de-sac, somehow finding a way through adjacent property with a variance up, I mean, an easement as a possibility? Is that something that's been considered?
That would not be something that the municipality would be able to consider. That would be a private property arrangement. So it's not something that we would seek as a municipality because it's not our property.
I guess it's a question to the applicant.
Mm-hmm.
I realize not the
yeah,
city.
if you're curious if they have explored that option, definitely when the applicant speaks to the board, that's something that can be discussed with the applicant.
Yeah, so it's in the next item, right? If you in item 4.3,
Mm-hmm.
then you can repeat the same question.
Okay.
All right.
I didn't realize we weren't still all together. I see what we're doing. I get it now.
I'm just presenting the application, and I can answer any questions pertaining to the facts of the application or the legislation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you've done a great job of making this a clear presentation.
Thank you.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay. So, Emma, you're finished with your presentation. So
yes.
That's correct? Okay. So then 4.3, applicant opportunity to speak to the board.
Hi there.
Hey, nice James Stewart.
Hey, Fritz, how are you?
Pretty good.
You're looking great. It's good to see you.
If you ask me, I have to ask everybody else how they're doing.
Yeah, well, and everybody else. Emma, great job on the presentation. Sorry, I was just a few minutes late. I'm traveling now, so I had to find a place to pull over and chat. But
traveling.
Not just a site visit. So
good.
I'm not on vacation or anything. It's just a local site visit, but fitting this in between some meetings. So
Penny will make note of that.
Yeah. So would you like me to go ahead and just say a few words?
Yes, please.
So I was actually the architect of the house. And as you probably, some of you know and some of you don't, Penny and I were married for a long, long time. And I've been helping her out on this shed. And I guess, my take on this variance is it really is about the hardship. The cost of housing is extremely expensive on Bowen Island. This was a house that Penny could afford. And one of the reasons she could afford it is it came with some hardship in itself. The fact that there's 100+ steps up to the site. So it was built by a young gentleman who since moved to Vancouver Island, and it requires a lot of physical energy to travel up and down the hillside to get to your house. So I think asking for this variance for a shed is something that probably anybody would do. Buying this place moving forward, we're not getting any younger, Penny and I think having the ability to store camping gear and things that you're going to use seasonally or not necessarily up the house down by the street is really a benefit from making you cart them up and down. And then the other thing is when you look at the design, it's got a shed roof that's sloping with the hillside. So there's not a lot of roof you see. Actually, I think accessory buildings can be very beautiful, and I think they can add to the neighborhood charm. It's much better than allowing people just to store all their stuff on a driveway. Most people prefer neighborhoods where there's garages and things are kept tidy. So I think having the shed serves a couple of purposes. And then I guess the last thing I would say is, you know, these setbacks are so intangible on Miller Road because the hillside's so steep. As Emma mentioned, there's trees between the shed and this. If you were to ask any layperson on the site, once the shed is built, does that meet the current setback or not? I doubt anybody would have any clue whether it did. It's a very abstract idea because it's vertically so much higher than the road. It's not like it's right beside the road. So I just hope that you guys can kind of consider this for Penny. And I think the design is simple yet elegant. The materials are quality materials. There's an investment in the community here. There's an investment in this neighborhood, and I think it's taking the neighborhood in a good direction. So I'll just leave it short and sweet at that. But I'm happy to answer any questions. And regarding the cul-de-sac at the top, so I think Penny could maybe help me out on this, but my understanding is that's a strata corporation, that's a private road, and I think that this lot does not actually physically back on to a road right away or even a road easement for that matter. So getting access from the top is very difficult. It would require going through private property to get here. So it really is a traditional lot. It was probably designed and platted in the 1920s. As we all know in Bowen, many of the surveyors probably lived in England, or if they lived in Vancouver, it's doubtful they ever visited the island when they laid out a lot of these historic subdivisions. So here you have one of these lots that it's a half acre, but it's very, very steep. So.
Okay. Penny, do you have anything to add to that?
Thanks, Fritz. Well, yeah, and I'd like to thank you all for taking your time to attend this meeting today and look at this proposal. And just in reference to that one question, yes, it's about 100 meters to the nearest driveway. And that's a private driveway on Cullen's farm. And so, no, I haven't spoken to them about access. They have permitted me to bring in a heavy stove across a deer trail, but it is pretty inapproachable from that direction.
Okay. All right. So then, so the public opportunity to speak to the board, I guess if there was no candidates for that, that's correct, right? There's nobody who wants to speak. I think that means no.
No request for public comment.
All right, okay. So then the next thing is the Board of Variance discussion. And it's either Chris or Rick who wants to start.
I just had a couple of questions. Will there be any rock required to be removed for this shed area?
That's a kind of good question for James, maybe. Is that true or not? Yeah, James, you have to switch on your, you're on mute.
Yeah, the host muted me, but she's unmuted me. Thank you very much. No, one of the beautiful things about the design is it's very sensitive to the environment. It's built on 6x6 Douglas fir posts, which will be attached with small concrete sonotubes to the rock. There's no blasting at all. It's going to blend in very nicely with the natural environment.
Okay.
So the other thing I had was that there was no materials actually called up on the presentation here. Is that a metal roof that you have on there, and what color is that?
Yeah, it would be a metal roof. It would be silver to galvalume to match the roof above on the main house. And as I mentioned, I don't think that the roof, given the slope of it, and it's such a steep site, it's not really visible either. But the beauty of galvalume is it gets this patina on it. It's an alloy of zinc and aluminum. And so it dulls, and it kind of looks like the color of the ocean or the color of the sky. Now, the siding illustrated there would be a clear cedar. So it would be a very high level of finish. It's such a small building. I think we can afford to clad this with a clear cedar. So that will be quite elegant as well.
Okay. And the only other question that I had was the height was listed at over 2.5 meters. So where is that 2.5 meters? Is that from grade, or is that from the floor level, or the high or low peak area?
That's it's over 2.5 meters. Penny, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't have the drawings handy, but I think it's got, on the low side, it's like a 7-foot ceiling. And on the high side, it's probably like a 9-foot ceiling. One of the restrictions you have when you build these buildings that are not required to have a permit is you have a building height restriction that's basically impossible to build anything that's of use. They're really designed for Home Depot sheds that you buy, you know, the things that are made out of plastic or aluminum and put up. And to actually technically calculate the building height, you take the average of the 4 points of the building. So it's kind of an abstract calculation of where average grade is. It's kind of like the setback. It's hard to tell where average grade is. But I think to answer your question, from the floor level of the building, I believe it's 7 feet on the low side, and I believe it's about 9 feet on the high side, plus or minus a few inches.
Okay, thanks.
Not a very tall building.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, that was Rick. Chris, you have questions?
I don't really have any questions. I'm favorably impressed with the presentation, the design, the layout, and certainly by the need.
Right. Okay. That was it, Chris?
Pretty much. Thanks.
Right. Okay. So then I have a few comments, but not much really. I kind of agree with the comments that were made, and yes, the building is attractive on a small scale. What I also believe is that it doesn't actually have much impact visually. I drive on that road quite often, and I believe that if the building would have been slightly back or not, that it would visually be more or less identical. You know what I mean? It's like it has a certain size, and if you move that box a little bit closer to the road or not, it doesn't seem to make any difference. In both cases, you would see it, in my mind, almost the same. So I don't think from that point of view, there's anything that complicates the application. There's maybe one thing that could be addressed a little bit. Like when you build something like this, is there anything that changes in the landscape? Do you have any plans to do any landscaping, or is that in your mind not necessary? Yeah, that's actually a question for the applicants, and you can choose which one is going to answer that.
I think I'll leave this up to Penny because it's her property and her pocketbook on spending money on it.
Okay. Okay, Penny, there you go.
Thanks for the question, Fritz. It's a good question. From a landscaping, where the shed's going to sit right now, there's already a platform, and it's pretty much rock on either side except for the stair side. I do hope to rebuild the stairs in the next few years as the pocketbook will allow, because they will need rebuilding. But that's, and then I have some heavy flower pots where I'm currently living that won't make it up the hill. So I plan to decorate or use some of those in and around the shed.
Yeah, okay.
Soften its appearance.
It was just more a question, like how in your mind the finished visual effect will be. But okay, I don't really have other questions. I found it quite convincing, the whole presentation, and also you clearly described, what the reasons for hardship are. Hardship is normally not considered to be anything financial, I think, but it obviously, it's so well presented that I think we can quite easily get some kind of an agreement together for the file, for the approval. So what is not
share the?
Yeah, Steph, what is the best thing to do now, right?
I'll share the proposed recommendation on the screen, and you guys can tweak it if you'd like, if appropriate. Oh, what screen do you have?
It's still waiting for yours to load right now, but can I also add in considering this variance, The board should also first determine that the variance is minor and that there is undue hardship.
Yeah, okay, true.
Are you seeing that?
I'm seeing it.
A recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, because it's indicating on my third screen that the third screen is being shared, which is a picture of my children.
I don't see your kids.
No,
Okay.
I don't either.
Good stuff. So that the board variance application be denied, be allowed, or be allowed with the following conditions. I'm hearing allowed, and I'm not hearing any conditions. Is that correct?
Well, I think that's true, but I would like to echo Fritz's question about the landscaping, and not to make it a condition, but to make it.
Recommendations.
Sorry?
Recommendations?
Yeah, well, I don't know if we're in a position to make a recommendation, but I think, yeah, I think we, I guess encouraged would be the word I'd use. If it's appropriate.
Well, it doesn't do any harm, I think so.
Landscaping is encouraged. That makes sense.
Yeah, and not to screen the building, which I think is attractive in its own right, but to maybe repair the perimeter along Miller a little bit, brighten it up a little bit.
Ah.
We can't impose that, but I would encourage it anyway for my property.
Anybody else have anything to contribute to the recommendation?
No, it's good.
No, I don't think so. But what Emma, what you're saying is that I think we can all agree that it's a minor variance. And do we have to specify what makes it minor? Because that it has minimum impact on the public space, something like that.
You want me to include that as a whereas, Fritz?
Well, what Emma said, that as a board, because as a board of variance, we're only really allowed to make decisions for minor variances, so that we have to that this actually is a minor variance. So that if we consider, if the board of variance considers the applied variances to be minor, because they have minimum impact on the public space, and from a dimensional point of view, I gotta check how you say that, but from a dimensional point of view, it would not have made any difference if the proposed shed would have been somewhat further away from the road. So it's just that maybe it's clear that it's minor. Does anybody have anything else to say that makes it clearly minor?
Well,
I think that covers it.
If it had been compliant, it wouldn't necessarily have been an improvement over the proposed solution.
Right.
Yeah, because the same shed could have been built somewhat more theory, if there wouldn't be the hardship of the rock, right? Then the shed could have been built somewhat back, and it would have had the same impact or the same presence as the proposed shed. So the difference is negligent, and therefore it's minor. Something like that.
So I can also just add for guidance, the question of whether or not a variance is minor is actually a very difficult question. So there is no black and white guidelines. But in general, a lot of boards use questions such as, will the variance cause any adverse impacts? Will it go against the intent of the bylaw? Will it impact neighbors? So a lot of those
Okay, sure.
items that were in the checklist already.
Okay.
So what do you think of this wording then, Emma? Do you not want to bother talking about minor and just say?
No, actually, I think it is very important, especially if the decision is challenged. It is very important that the reason that the board deems this variance minor and why it would cause undue hardship, the reasons should be recorded.
Proposed building site has minimal impact on the property.
So the intent from the bylaw, I suppose, is to maintain a residential character. Am I so correct?
Yeah, but that's kind of beyond. I mean, there's no challenge to the residential character here, and it hasn't been brought up.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm saying is that if you look at the bylaw, right, and the bylaw normally has an intent, so the zoning bylaw, it's a settlement residential area, and the intent, in my mind, is that the property maintains a residential character, and then you can say from it's minor because if the shed would have been closer to the road or not, in both cases the impact is the same. So there's no difference in how it affects the residential character of that lot. I mean,
what's the verb I'm looking for, Emma? The intent of the bylaw is like honored.
I think exactly what Fritz was saying. The intent of that front setback in this zone is to help maintain that residential character of the neighborhood. And by extension to preserve the right of the residents to enjoy their property.
Okay.
Yes, and that has something to do with the neighbors, that the impact on the. I mean, like we received 2 letters of support from each neighbor, right? So that kind of proves that the impact on neighboring properties there is no negative impact on neighboring properties, and it has been confirmed by the 2 letters received from the neighbors.
Okay.
And then for the public sphere, as I think James said it pretty well too, actually, because he said because it's right up against the rock face, it is exactly in the location where you expect it to be. And if it would have been more backwards, I don't think it would have made any difference in how you perceive it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but Emma, are these, like I haven't read what Steph is saying, where's proposed building site is minor variance. I think you have to say why the intent of the zoning bylaw, I think it should say, whereas the intent of the RS, what is it, RS? RS2?
RS2?
SR2.
But
it, or in general, you could just say land use bylaw. Land use bylaw.
Yeah, okay. By the land use bylaw. And the intent, do we have to say that it is to maintain or to maintain a residential character? Because if somebody asks, well, what is the intent of the land use bylaw?
Well, the land use bylaw covers many different zones. This particular zone, the SR2 zone, is to preserve that residential character. Yes.
Yeah, okay, so you can. I think you should add that in
there. Is
you're almost there.
The verb I'm looking for. Bylaw is
maintain.
Thank you, people.
I would take the word definition out. It says, whereas the intent of the land use bylaw zoning, SR2, to preserve residential character.
Yeah, I don't know if it's minor, but whereas the proposed building site actually It's the building that's the issue, not the site.
Well, kind of. I mean, the building would be the same size, theoretically, if it would have been built more back, right?
The variance is for the site.
Okay.
You're varying the setback.
Yeah.
Which is
Okay.
the site.
Oh, so setback is the word then. There?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please feel free to jump in. I don't understand zoning language like you.
This is great.
You can write
You're
it.
doing
You,
great,
you can write it. You just don't understand it. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, well,
Got enough checkbook?
maybe, like, you know, Emma, if you look at this, right, is that kind of complete enough?
You might want to expand on how the applicant has demonstrated hardship, or what you consider was the demonstrated hardship.
Yeah, but that's different from your first question. This was more like, why is it minor?
Yes, so there's the two. The board needs to find the variance to be minor and that there will be undue hardship.
Yeah, but that's what we're going to do now, right? That's next, the hardship.
Okay.
So the hardship, well, I guess it's clear, right? One item of the hardship is simply the steep terrain, you know, with the 100 steps up. That's clear. That needs to be addressed. And then secondly, with the steep topography, the only level area suitable to locate the structure is where it is proposed. So you can't really move it.
Constitutes might be a good word for causes.
I would put that landscaping completely separate, because that's just a comment, you know, like another.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to say the applicant demonstrated the topography of the property as undue hardship.
I would say that the selected building area is the only area suitable to place that shed.
Proposed?
The proposed siding or building area is probably good. It's the only suitable.
You know what? I can do little wordsmiths off-site when the cameras are off. Verbs and prepositions, if that's okay with you guys. Do you want to? I don't know how to say climbing stairs, carrying camping gear in fancy words. Anybody? Are we okay with this, Emma?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably good enough.
Yep. I think the board just needs to keep in mind that if their decision is challenged, that these notes are sufficient for them to defend their decision. Okay,
then maybe if you have the suitable location, you know, maybe you can write behind her that to avoid massive rock removal or something like that. Because
environmental devastation.
Yeah, massive rock removal and unnecessary disruption of the natural environment. And yeah.
Disruption of what?
Of the natural environment or of the landscape, you know. I would say natural environment, I think is good. Because it is true, you know, I mean, like you can certainly, anything can be built with enough force and money, I guess, but this is just a, you know, a gentle way of providing that use. Okay, so what else do we need to do now?
Want to read it out and then have a vote?
Okay, here it says it has, for instance, what you wrote down, it bears impacts on the environment. I guess we kind of dealt with that. substantial impacts on neighbors, we dealt with that. Permitted uses or densities to be varied. The use is not varied really. The density is not varied. Do we have to say that, or is that clear enough? There's no change of use. There is no change in density. It meets the bylaw except for the requested variance.
Mm-hmm. The list of things to consider are things that the board is responsible for considering in their decision, but I think as far as what needs to be recorded in the decision really is whether or not it's minor and if there's undue hardship.
Okay, so is am I your mind from listening to our responses? Is that clear enough the way it's written?
Yes, it seems very clear.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we're at 4.6, the recommendation.
Oh, you got to vote. Oh.
Yeah.
So
Rick and Chris, do you feel that what is written there is ready and suitable to be voted on?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
I'm totally happy with it.
Okay, well, I'm happy too. So now we have to vote.
Yeah. Happiness is not enough. We need a mover.
So we have to go back to the that you can see people raising.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
How do you record that?
Sorry, just a sec.
We were in Zoom land here, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is it traditional to read it out and then actually have call for a vote?
Yeah, but then the raising of the hands can be visually
Yeah.
So do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Whereas the proposed building site setback is a minor variance that has minimal visual impact on the property or public sight lines. Whereas the intent of land use bylaw zoning SR2 to preserve residential character is maintained. Whereas the application has the support of neighbors. Whereas the applicant has demonstrated that the topography of the property causes undue hardship. And the proposed building area is the only suitable location for a storage shed to avoid massive rock removal and unnecessary disruption of the natural environment. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Variance application number BOV 20210034 be allowed.
Ooh, now you have to wait and see what happens. Okay, shall we vote now?
Yep.
Okay, raise your hand. That means you're in favor. So that feels to me like we're done. Is that correct?
No, Steph has to say passed unanimously first.
Yeah, okay, I like that.
Carried unanimously.
Because nobody can see our hands.
Okay. Good work. Good work.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now then we're done, I think.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Great. Good to see everybody again.
Good to see you all.
Yeah, it was nice. Yeah, it was nice to have a Board of Variance meeting. It doesn't happen every week, does it?
Nice and simple.
Okay, Emma, bye. Penny,
Take
bye.
care.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, Penny.